Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
How you doing this week?
Fantastic. Although this format coming up is proving quite the monster. How you doing?
So I am also doing fantastic, but for different reasons. You know, just I'm a little less jet setting than you are. I'm jet setting only south to the Florida Panhandle versus you being a European tourist this week. First Prague. Now, soon you'll be going to Dublin. It's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, tourist is basically how I approach this planet. But
you're on a tour, man. You're on a tour of Europe. That's what you're doing.
Oh, yes. And at the moment, honestly, if you're only going to hit a couple cities, Dublin and Prague are. You could do a lot worse than Dublin and Prague. Those are two fantastic cities.
Well, and at the very least, those are the cities where Team Top Level is testing / playing in the Pro Tour.
Correct.
At the very least.
Yeah, definitely enjoying kicking it with the guys at just having an apartment here in Prague and have been battling. But speaking of battling, there's been a little bit of battling already. Week 2 of 8th Revolt Standard is in the books.
Yep. So we've seen, in some sense, more of the same, but then also variations on the theme so far. So I think it's at the very least, I'd say this is giving framework to the Pro Tour that you're about to play in, right? So maybe these are going to be the decks that are at least similar. You know, I would guess some people perform with these kind of decks, and of course, you know, the Pro Tour is going to have its own, shall we say, innovators coming up and coming at it from other angles. But let's look at what's happened so far. Do you mind if we start?
For what it's worth, we can start wherever you want. But for what it's worth, I think one of these decks might be the most played deck of the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Well, let's start wherever you want.
Let's start with the champ.
Got it. Dylan Donegan.
Yeah, but once in, I guess, maybe future, but certainly present champion, Dylan Donegan with Jeskai Saheeli. So, Jeskai Saheeli is a 3-color Jeskai deck. And Dylan is no stranger to the winner's circle or red, blue, and white decks. The variation we see here is it's fairly slight, I think, relative to what we've seen for kind of the control version of Jeskai so far. But Dylan's got some stuff going on, like moving things from one zone to another. So, again, the Saheeli Rai Felidar Guardian combo, it puts together the 3-mana Planeswalker Saheeli Rai, the 4-mana Cat Beast Felidar Guardian to go wide for infinite damage. Again, this is one of the control shells. Dylan has but he's made it even more control, right? So I think he's done 2 things that are interesting. One, he's added Nahiri the Harbinger to the main deck, which I think we talked about that a little bit. And then he did something unusual from my perspective. He cut the Felidar Guardians to 3 copies.
So, Felidar Guardian is a little interesting in his deck because he's actually pulling far enough back that it's really embracing the actual Jeskai control element, the control strategy, and relying on the fact that Saheeli Rai and Felidar Guardian can be put to use in other ways, but give him a plan in tough spots. Importantly, Felidar Guardian can reset Oath of Jace, as we talked about a little bit last week, and going really long can reset a Torrential Gearhulk. And drawing multiple Felidar Guardians, part of what's going on here is that there's a gamble that drawing multiple Felidar Guardians is, this deck is so not committed to the combo that you just don't want to draw multiples because there's just too many expensive cards and not enough impact on the board. This is a deck that's trying to squeeze every little bit of interaction it can. It's got 2 negates, 2 fumigates, 2 immolating glare, 4 harness lightning, 3 disallow, and being able to play with all this interaction. I mean, in Felidar Guardian, it being trimmed for that Nahiri gives a little bit more main deck interaction. Being able to just put Nahiri down and then boom, X something, -2 to kill something. Like whether it's a walking ballista where Nahiri will actually survive. That's an important little kind of like math sequencing. The most common way, Nahiri will end up at just 1 counter, but I don't know. I think that it comes down to how often are you planning on just comboing out very, very quickly versus how much are you willing to sit around and play a mediocre Jeskai control game.
Well, so here's the thing. When we first started talking about the control version of the Nahiri combo, I think this is 2 or 3 weeks ago now, you made the comment that the problem here is that a Jeskai control deck, or even it's called a blue-red control deck, the
well,
white.
this one even has Fumigate.
Yeah.
I mean, Fumigate.
And it has immolating glare. It's got white cards. But if you start with that at the center, Felidar Guardian and Saheeli Rai are the least synergistic cards in the deck. They just happen to be synergistic with each other, right? They're bad-ish with everything else to start.
Yeah, medium. I mean, at least Saheeli Rai. Saheeli Rai does do a couple things that you like. First of all, Scry of Return is actually quite decent, right?
It's not just Scry of Return. It's Scry of Return, gain loyalty, and draw fire, right? So one of the things that any control player is going to want is to not have its own life total depleted, right? And I think drawing a little fire, especially if the opponent doesn't have a critical amount of recurring damage in the form of creatures available to kill Saheeli Rai or to kill you, that's actually a thing, right? And scrying is a thing that a control deck might want. You want to be able to hit your lands, or if you've got lands, you want to be able to draw into your money, your Glimmer of Genius, your Torrential Gearhulk, etc.
So I actually think the damage from Saheeli Rai is highly underrated. You see, when it's doing the scrying, it also gets the damage, and this lets you do a couple things. First of all, it makes it harder for people to get you with stuff like, for instance, Liliana -2 to get back a creature, or Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, +1/+1 to the team. The fact that you can incidentally ping Planeswalkers at 1 loyalty comes up sometimes. But even more important, you can keep a Planeswalker from going ultimate on you.
Oh, that's important.
Because Jeskai, compared to say Blue-Black or Esper, right? Traditionally, Jeskai has had a bit more trouble with Planeswalker ultimates. And Saheeli Rai gives you a way to keep you're still getting, they're getting whatever the advantage is, but you can actually keep their Planeswalker from ultimating you, or ultimating you as fast if it's a +2 type of Planeswalker. And that can actually... That can be a really big deal when you're trying to just survive long enough, if you're trying to hang out long enough to set up a combo or take over with Torrential Gearhulk.
I think speaking of Torrential Gearhulk, I think one of the things that kind of really gets dug out by Saheeli Rai, and I think you said already to a lesser extent Felidar Guardian, is that Saheeli Rai and Torrential Gearhulk, they're buddies, right? If you got a Torrential Gearhulk already, Saheeli Rai can put you in a really massively advantaged position. Probably to the point you could just kill somebody immediately. It's like a mini ultimate, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But I think that the important card here that... it's silly to say we haven't seen this before. We've seen it in other contexts. This just happens to be the first week of these cards being played together. Is Nahiri the Harbinger. Because...
Well, Nahiri does something kind of sweet here.
Well, it does a bunch
with Felidar Guardian?
Well, if you want to talk about the efficacy of Oath of Jace, Nahiri the Harbinger is just the world's best Oath of Jace, right? Right? You just get filtering every turn while gaining loyalty.
Yeah, I don't know if that's it does cost 4 and can be attacked and doesn't give you all the cards up front or let you scry every turn.
But other than that, it is the world's. It is the greatest. It is the best Oath of Jace.
Well, it does have one other synergy the same way that Oath of Jace does, in that it works well with Felidar Guardian. You can actually trigger your Planeswalkers twice when you have a Felidar Guardian. You know, like if you have Nahiri, you could actually minus in order to kill their Walking Ballista, and then they when they shoot it or whatever, you can actually drop Felidar Guardian and reset Nahiri and then plus it. So this time, instead of being at 1 loyalty, it's at 6. Plus you got a loot out of the deal.
That's cool.
Yeah. But also the fact that it's an implied threat so quickly, because like if you put out Nahiri on turn 4 and plus it to 6, the very next turn, if they're not putting you under pressure already, you're now just 2 turns away from getting a Torrential Gearhulk for free if you want. And that's, that's like Torrential Gearhulk. If you've already cast a Glimmer of Genius, maybe you want it, maybe you don't. But what's so sick here is the Torrential Gearhulk actually triggers twice, because you get to go get the Torrential Gearhulk, copy something, bash your opponent or their Planeswalker, then you get the Gearhulk back, and now you just have a Gearhulk in your hand in case you need to, like, flash back a Disallow. Whatever.
Well, yeah, it actually, there's a small point there. You don't even have to have cast the Glimmer of Genius. You could have just pitched the Glimmer of Genius to Nahiri, right?
Right.
And then just get it back for free with the Torrential Gearhulk, which isn't mean to say that you don't want to cast Glimmer of Genius. It's actually one of the best cards that you can cast in this kind of a strategy. But maybe you don't have the time, right? Like, maybe you're like 4th turn Nahiri, 5th turn Fumigate, right? And then, but in the meantime, you're putting a Glimmer of Genius in the graveyard because you needed to draw into your Fumigate because you're under pressure. I don't know, something like that might be going on.
And it sounds funny, but it's very real to Nahiri up the Felidar Guardian in order to complete the combo.
Yeah, I think that's a thing, for sure.
Definitely. That's part of the reason why Dylan shaved the 4th Felidar Guardian, is giving him, like, the Nahiri is giving a little bit of that percentage back.
It's actually really interesting. Like, you can be in a situation where you've got Saheeli Rai in play already, right? And you don't have the Felidar Guardian yet, but somehow you do have Nahiri online. And maybe your opponent is just like holding back, with the intention of countering a Felidar Guardian. I guess if they had a disallow, they could stop you from using the Nahiri. But I think there's some situations where somebody could intend to counter your Felidar Guardian, they won't be able to because you searched up with Nahiri.
Well, and a big part of it is the fact that you can be undercover. You're sitting there with Nahiri in play, ticking up, and you've got like counter spells and removal, and then suddenly out of nowhere, boom, Felidar Guardian, Saheeli Rai.
Yeah,
And
then it's a small thing because it's only in the sideboard, and we're only talking about a deck with 1/1 copies of Nahiri anyway. But you got to always respect the fact that he's got Linvala the Preserver in the back pocket. I
know that's your jam. That is so your jam.
It's Phil Donegan's jam, man. It's there. It's in his deck list. It's card number 73, but it's there. This is the kind of deck that almost by definition is going to be behind on creatures. It has basically no damage sources, so it's typically going to be behind on life. Boom! Linvala the Preserver, full value. How's it taste? Angelic.
Well, so how do you like Dylan's deck compared to Brad's deck? Brad Shepard, who finished 3rd, also played a very similar Jeskai Saheeli deck. The primary differences here, and even the one Nahiri, right? The primary difference is he does have the 4th Felidar Guardian, and his mix of counter magic is a little different. 1 Dispel, 2 Negate, and 2 Void Shatter. Not a disallow to be seen. And then beyond that, most of the interaction is relatively the same. one Oath of Chandra, one Shock, an awful lot of Mizing.
I like Oath of Chandra in this deck. Shock. I think Dispel is cool. I think Dispel has a very different kind of sidewards eye coming out of the deck and how it looks at the metagame. But no way am I going to co-sign Void Shatter over Disallow. I don't like Void Shatter. I mean, it's just like
dude, Disallow is great.
Find a way to make Void Shatter better. Sometimes you're just going to get caught. Like, it's going to be stupid because this deck isn't even really a colorless deck or anything. It's not really like an artifact deck. But somebody sees you've got Void Shatter, and you might just be in a situation where you get caught by Ceremonious Rejection because it's in your deck.
Dude,
I mean, probably
perpetually
not.
Live in fear of that. I know you.
I'm not saying I don't live in fear of anything, man. I'm a Gryffindor. I'm not a Gryffindor, but I don't know. It's just I have a hard time believing that Void Shatter is better than Disallow in this format. Even from the situation we just talked about, where you're sitting back with your Void Shatter, hoping to stop somebody from casting Felidar Guardian, but they search up Nahiri. They search it up with Nahiri. You could have stopped that with a Disallow, and you just can't stop it with a Void Shatter. That's no bueno.
From the looks of it, all of the Nahiri decks, all the Jeskai decks are embracing Nahiri this past weekend. It's the new hotness. Even Charlie Murdoch went up to 2 Nahiris. Almost the exact same deck, just actually trimmed a Glimmer of Genius of all things in order to make room for the second Nahiri.
I'm not co-signing that one, friend. That's
pretty wild.
That. Glimmer of Genius it's one of my favorite cards to cast in this kind of a deck, and man, is it one of my favorite cards to flash back in this kind of a deck. It's just the best. I liked casting Inspiration. This card is much better. So I like Nahiri. I don't like it enough to cut Glimmer of Genius. But he has a bunch of the rando stuff, a second Oath of... I guess when you're playing this many Planeswalkers, a second Oath of Chandra starts giving you much more money, though.
Yeah, and Oath of Chandra is actually a sweet thing to blink with Felidar Guardian, where you actually turn it into a Flame Tongue Kavu.
That's hot. But
yeah.
What do you think about all these? What do you think about the context for cards like Fumigate and Radiant Flames in the main? Is the format in your mind very welcoming of Radiant Flames?
Medium on Radiant Flames, but I think Fumigate is awesome right now.
See,
yeah, I actually think Fumigate is actively awesome in the format at the moment. And the reason is because of how effective it is against black-green. The recent, not in days gone by, but black-green has changed a lot, right? Part of it is that black-green got one of the absolute most absurd cards in the new set that works so perfect with one of the cards that's in the running for best cards, right? The Walking Ballista, I don't think Walking Ballista is going to prove to be the actual best, but I think Walking Ballista might show up the most, as it's a great card in an awful lot of decks. Winding Constrictor, on the other hand, is it's weirdly good. Winding Constrictor is format warping, and one of the things that's happening in response to how unbelievably powerful the Winding Constrictor sort of approach, Rishka, Pima Renegade, Walking Ballista, all this new style of black-green is very difficult, very, very, very difficult to fight. Whether it's if you fall behind at all, if you most people can't produce creatures that are as big for that kind of mana. Just turn 2 Winding Constrictor, turn 3 Rishka Pima Renegade is so much stat. And it blows Radiant Flames out of the water. It's also just difficult for a deck with shocks, where you're sitting there, you have shock in your hand, and your opponent does this Rishka Pima Renegade Winding Constrictor this, and even if you're lucky and kill the Rishka Pima Renegade in response to the +1/+1 counter, you still are facing a 4/5 Winding Constrictor. And Fumigate, on the other hand, it's a great way to catch up, gain a little bit of extra life in the meantime, but to let your opponent overextend and actually punish them for it.
I think it's one of those
stuff. Go ahead.
One of those things like the old blue-green decks. You remember when, like, the blue-green madness, blue-green threshold days, that you could just put out like two good cards, right? One of them's your beater, and then the other one's like your enabler, and you could just barf out your entire hand if you wanted. Because you didn't, though, right? Like, you've got enough power in a maybe two bodies on the table to put the opponent under enough pressure that they have to have a card like Fumigate, or they're gonna get killed in a few attacks. You don't have to overcommit. Like, I think that's a tactical consideration for the creature deck. Just that you got good power, you got good stuff going on, right? I think it depends.
Well, and part of it is the threat of Verdurous Gearhulk, right? Like, the black-green deck doesn't have to overcommit the same way because of the Verdurous Gearhulk, but you still need to have a way to get them when they have two creatures. You still need to get ahead of them.
Oh, yeah, I think that
sometimes they're going to stick the Verdurous Gearhulk. And if they stick a Verdurous Gearhulk, how can you even win if you don't have, like, either a combo kill or Fumigate?
Yeah, so I think I think that the life gain on Fumigate's obviously, that's a thing, right? Like, at the point, given the speed that the creature deck is going to be able to deploy power against you, just every little bit counts. But I think you're right. I think that depending on how the black-green deck plays, if they stick the Verdurous Gearhulk, you're just dead anyway, right? Like, you need to beat them with a counterspell at that point. Or I guess depending on how they attack, like, one of the white removal cards. But like you said before, the shock
I don't mean an 8/8 Verdurous Gearhulk, though.
No,
I'm talking about spraying the counters out.
Yeah, you've got, like, multiple bodies, or like one or two good bodies. You put it out there and you hit them for an additional X damage, right? Like, depending on the Winding Constrictor situation. But yeah, it's a lot of damage coming. It's an extra 5 power or so, right?
Well, it depends. I mean, yeah, the Winding Constrictor situation can make things out of control very quickly.
Yeah, but I think the interesting thing is it looked like Shock was going to be a defining defensive card.
Well, it still is. It's just that it's part of the reason Winding Constrictor is so absurd.
Yeah, I mean, Winding Constrictor itself, like, it's just insulting to Shock, right? It's just a 2-drop. Before you even get into how potentially powerful it is with the other synergies, it's just like, its resume includes also the best against Shock.
Yeah, but Shock still gets its money, right? Like, Hissing Quagmire, Walking Ballista, even when they have a Winding Constrictor, right? Like, Shock ends up getting you, like, Shock puts in enough work, even against the people where it's awesome, or where that are awesome against it, I mean. Like, I think Shock it's not necessarily as good as it is at level 0, because people do end up, shifting their decks a little bit. But, like, it's a good 1-mana play in a world that is not exactly overpopulated with 1-mana spells that are good, right? Or 1-mana sorceries and instants. Plenty of good 1-mana creatures, but a little bit of a shortage of interaction for 1 mana beyond Shock and Fatal Blow and Galvanic Bombardment.
Yeah, those are.
Fatal Push. I think Fatal Push is the best of them, though.
Yeah, but Fatal Push, unlike Shock, isn't going to be as good against Saheeli Rai. I think that's different.
I disagree. I don't know. Maybe. It depends. Yeah, I mean, Shock obviously can break up the combo, and if you're playing, like, with a lot of pressure, but it depends on what kind of a deck you're playing, right? I mean,
like, Fatal Push can too, you just need a little work, right?
Right, and it depends on what the rest of your deck is doing, right? Like, Shock does it easier if you don't want to be doing, like, a bunch of other stuff, but, and Fatal Blow, or Fatal Push is worse against straight up the Saheeli combo, but like, Fatal Push versus, like, take for instance Spell Queller, which is like a very popular Saheeli sideboard card, right? Like the fact that Fatal Push can actually disrupt a Spell Queller or break up the combo, assuming your deck has a lot of ways to trigger a revolt. That's like, that's a meaningful difference compared to Shock, which is so often so bad against Saheeli after sideboard.
That's fair.
Depending on how they play. So do you prefer the Jeskai Saheeli style of Jeskai control, or something more like Luke Feeney's Jeskai control with 2 Jace Unraveler of Secrets and then just more of all the same control cards and then just no combo?
I was going to go the exact same direction to ask you about Luke's deck. I actually think that I'd have to play this deck more than the 0 I've played it so far. I think that long run I would prefer a Jeskai control deck that could insta-kill the opponent, but I'm not sure. And I think that Luke very obviously had some serious Gryffindor going on to play this deck. I don't
know what that even means. You keep using that expression. You have to understand.
Gryffindors are brave, Muggle. He had the bravery.
Oh, okay. I'm not a Muggle. I'm from the world of magic.
I don't know. You don't know what a Gryffindor is, apparently. All right, but anyway, I think that the card choices here are interesting to say the least, right? Like, I'm not convinced. Like, just again, I haven't played Luke's actual deck yet, but I'm not convinced that Jace Unraveler of Secrets, even in this deck, is better than just playing Nahiri, right?
Oh, I am.
You're convinced.
Yeah, I think I love at least the first one. I think the first Jace Unraveler of Secrets in these control decks, I like it in all of them.
I mean, I played one in a bunch of different decks. I think it's a fine card. It has good starting loyalty. It does some interesting stuff if you feel like you can defend yourself pretty well. Otherwise, it's a fine card. But Nahiri, actually, I guess drawing a card is better than just looting.
And drawing a card and scrying first is way better than looting.
I would just quote a very smart person from the world of Magic who once told me, Jace is one of the few ultimates that you can get off and still not win. Just can't win.
Dude, that's becoming less and less true. They're making more and more of the ultimates so possible.
So bad.
Well, no, what's funny is that they're often good. It's just that part of the reason they're good is because they're so much more reachable. And so they're able to make by making the ultimates not just game over, they can afford to make it so that the ultimate goes online soon enough that it doesn't actually just automatically win the game. Which is, I think, more interesting.
Yeah, it certainly it creates a different zone of play, right? Like, if you break up how a game looks, it's like, all right, this is the part of the game where one person's got 2 1s or 3 1s for 1, and the other person has to have shocks or fatal pushes or something, or they're just not going to win, right? And then here's the part of the game where one person has Liliana, and so the other person actually has to have things with sufficient toughness to not auto lose to one card. You have some interplay. And then you have a new zone of the game where, like, here's this thing. It's now, like, this effect that's always going on. Can the other person overcome it, or can the person who has this cool effect just ride it to victory because they have such an overwhelming advantage? Because it is an overwhelming advantage, right? Like, but not, like you said, a game over overwhelming advantage.
Yeah, I don't know about all the adjectives here. Like, this word overwhelming, I'm not sure what it means in those sentences then. However, it is definitely a very profound impact, but not necessarily a decisive one. And how you sculpt the game state, what you do with it, it matters a lot more when the ultimate requires a little bit of finesse.
All right, so I think that the lesson here is that the listeners should, maybe in comments somewhere, maybe over Twitter, discuss overwhelming, decisive, and what was the other one?
Green, black, and black, green.
Yeah.
It is, like, super dubious that these are listed as two different decks, but I get it, right? Like there's Winding Constrictor with a little bit more energy and Winding Constrictor with a little bit more Delirium. And I don't know. I don't know, man. I think that they're going to keep bleeding together, and there's going to be a confusing spectrum, and there's going to be the occasional ones that try to play into the +1/+1 counter thing even more. First of all, what's your preference between green-black slanted towards energy, which we saw last week, saw it again this week with Glint Sleeve, Siphoner, the Servant of Conduit, Aether Sphere Harvester, versus black-green Delirium slant with like Mind Rack Demon and Grim Flare?
Oh, I definitely err towards the Grim Flare side personally. I mean, among other things, Corey Lynch's deck only has 3 copies of Walking Ballista. I can't get behind that. What do you think of the Gifted Aetherborn stuff? Kind of interesting. I mean,
we predicted that one was going to show up.
I love Gifted Aetherborn. I think it plays into a bunch of the stuff we've talked about already. It's got a 3rd toughness automatically, which makes it auto good against shock, right? I think as long as it's relevant, it's actually, I don't even know how to put this. It's always relevant in the sense that even if opponents have bigger creatures than you, Gifted Aetherborn can always trade, right? So it's not like it's ever in a situation where it's just stone outclassed on the board. Like, even if they've got, like, the biggest thing, like a Burger Skeerhulk, which has Trample, etc., like, Gifted Aetherborn he's still got something going on. I like it a lot. I think that the biggest knock against it is you have to have 2 black on the second turn if you're going to play it on curve.
Yeah.
But, like, of cards that you're going to play for 2 mana, I think it's super relevant. I think, like, it's not even... I guess it's clear that Winding Constrictor is the superior 2/3 for 2, given all the synergies, but I don't think it is
clear by a lot. I think Winding Constrictor is absurd, and that to even be in the presence of Winding Constrictor should be an honor for Gifted Aetherborn.
Well, I think it's also a good 2/3 for 2.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's actually a good 2/3 for 2. I would not consider Winding Constrictor to be a good 2/3 for 2.
Like Winding Constrictor is like...
Winding Constrictor is more like a good 4/5 for 2.
It's like very Delver-ish, I think, Winding Constrictor. Like, it's not only better than its ostensible costs and impacts, but it's one of the things that people will talk about as the centerpiece card when, in years in the future when we're talking about a format like this. Like, oh, well, Constrictor decks, we'll just, use one word or whatever, and people are going to know what you're talking about because it's so defining.
Yeah, I mean, like, Smuggler's Copter before was the only good 2-drop, right? The only truly great 2-drop.
I mean,
there were plenty of good ones.
It made itself. Like, it was like... When we killed when Homo sapiens killed all the Neanderthals, they were probably perfectly good 2-legged creatures walking on the planet, but we just extincted them.
I think Walking Ballista is a really good 2-drop. I think Winding Constrictor is in a league all of its own. I don't think there are any 2-drops in the league with Winding Constrictor right now.
So
they banned Smuggler's Copter.
So answer the same question. Do you prefer the energy, or do you prefer like the more Golgari-ish kind of way to play?
So it's confusing to me. It depends on what everybody else ends up playing. I think that I like a little bit more the Delirium style, but I think that there's plenty of other ways to build these besides these two. For instance, to begin with, out of the top 8 Delirium, or out of the top 8 black-green decks, I'm definitely going, like, I would be definitely more in the camp of, like, Todd Anderson's 8th place list. First of all, he put 4 Verdurous Gearhulks and 4 Walking Ballistas in his deck. Like, already doing it. Like, I can't, like, I don't know. To me, for my games playing with the decks, Verdurous Gearhulk and Walking Ballista are amazing. So, like, it's
they're amazing together. That's actually the other thing.
Yes, they're amazing together. They're amazing with your best card, Winding Constrictor. They're amazing with enabling your traverses to go find more Verdurous Gearhulks. They're both amazing with Rishka Pima Renegade multiple ways. Like, I would play 4 Verdurous Gearhulks and 4 Walking Ballistas. And part of the reason I like the Delirium so much is that you get to keep traversing for more Verdurous Gearhulks. I think Verdurous Gearhulk is one of the defining cards of the format, and it is too fancy to not be just like leaning into. I don't know. I would play 4 Verdurous Gearhulks. Let's put it that way.
So if you contrast Todd's deck to Maxwell Postian's deck, like there's I think 2 main things that Maxwell's got going on in his deck that are points of differentiation. Number 1, he has a 24th land, right, versus Todd playing 23, and then he's got 1 copy of Noxious Gearhulk and only 3 copies of Verdurous Gearhulk. I agree with your contention about 4 copies of Verdurous Gearhulk because it's just actually about the time. It's not about the question of whether or not, I have these 3 copies of Traverse the Uvenwald, so I can go find a Verdurous Gearhulk. That's true, but on the turn that you hit your 5th mana, which it's variable because you've got Rishkar, you want to be able to just have it in your hand already and slam it, right? At least some of the time.
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely. Yes.
And I think it is cute to be able to go find a Noxious Gearhulk. That's cool. I mean, respect. But, like, not being able to just slam Verdurous Gearhulk and fight. Like, there's so many matchups that aren't.
I mean, Todd can do that too. He just has the Noxious Gearhulk in the sideboard.
Yeah, I mean, my main.
Along with the Ishkana, and the Cletus. He's got, like, all the fancy stuff in the sideboard when he knows he can bring in the right fancy stuff.
But, like, the matches that aren't about, like, I have to play a dance game because I'm worried about my opponent, how much coverage they have on their Saheeli Rai combo. Well, sometimes the games are just about they are trying to put a tremendous amount of pressure on you. You are trying to put pressure on them. Like, just here's 8 or 9 extra power in one turn, or, like, sometimes paired with an awesome
9 extra
creature.
Power in one turn.
Yeah, or like an awesome evasion creature like Mind Direct.
Wait, what are you talking about? I'm missing where you're getting 9 from.
Verdurous Gearhulk with Winding Constrictor in play. Isn't that 9 extra power?
No, it's a lot more than that. Depends on how you put the counters.
Oh my gosh, you're right. What a limited way for me to have said it. Yeah, so it's
my experience. It's like 11 or 12 usually.
50 extra power. Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, like if you liked Verdurous Gearhulk putting 8 points of stats down for 5, wait till you see the version that puts down 11 or 12 points of stats, and that's not even counting if you have a second Winding Constrictor because they stack.
So this is actually a really important point that I think that we've implied, but that when these 2 cards are played together, Winding Constrictor and Verdurous Gearhulk, you actually have a huge incentive to go wide rather than tall because you get extra
that's
power.
Why
the wider you go, the more powerful Verdurous Gearhulk becomes.
Right. And that's part of the reason Fumigate is so important. Because when the black-green deck keeps its threats just like too wide, you can often just be like, well, I'll Torrential Gearhulk and Immolating Glare one and chump the other and, whatever it is you got to do. But, like, when this deck goes wide, it goes really tall. It's like this deck is the sort of deck that will sometimes be just out of nowhere. I guess I just have 5 10-10s. Because when this deck gets going, it starts multiplying its advantages up and sideways, and I just think that Verdurous Gearhulk is the one that just it goes way over the top in these decks. It does so much. It's so big. It turns every one of your threats into just this enormous monster, and it really, really, really warps the types of things you can even do that will be relevant.
So let me ask you a kind of a qualitative question about playing Standard right now, Patrick. Is this like one of the formats that's very swingy, where in some formats somebody has a lot of momentum, and then even if the game isn't decided on a particular turn, you kind of can see that there's not going to be much the other side can do, even if they're trying to hold on? Or is this one of the kind of formats where, like, boom this thing, and you come back like boom back, and there's just such titanic waves coming from either side?
I'm not 100% sure that I don't know. I'm not sure where it would fall on that paradigm. If it's helpful, I can say that I think this is a format where the way you start out the first couple turns of the game matters a lot, and how your stuff lines up with your opponent's stuff. Because, like, if you play, like, for instance, when this deck draws Winding Constrictor versus when it doesn't, is a huge change in your win percentage. And obviously the Saheeli combo deck, when they actually just draw both parts of the combo, right? Like, this format involves a lot of really, really, really variable power level draws because of the way the different cards interact and how many of the cards that you have to play are so synergy driven. Like, for instance, when you fatal push, or like if you have fatal push, it matters so much if you draw one of the cards that can enable it when your opponent drops a Tireless Tracker. If you have a Verdurous Gearhulk, then your opponent's fatal push suddenly becomes terrible sometimes when your only threat is so big. So I don't know. I think from my experience playing the games, I think that there's a little bit of snowballing that happens sometimes, but I think it's going to be a really important format to mulligan correctly, because I think that this is definitely a format where you can have some hands that have the lands to cast the spells, and the cards are good cards, but if it's not the right kind of mix early in the game, you can just get pummeled because of how snowballing some of the advantages are. But that said, there are some big high swing cards. Like, there are times where you'll just play a Verdurous Gearhulk and the whole momentum will change. Or there'll be times where you'll play a Fumigate and turn everything around. So my answer is that it is a very snowballing format, but it's also one that does have some really swingy cards. I think that the single most, like, the loudest thing I'm seeing is how incredibly demanding the early turns of the game are. Now, there are ways you can interact with that, but if you don't have the stuff that interacts with the early snowballing advantages, it gets away from you very quickly.
Like, they don't even have to get to the super powerful stuff, because the advantages they build on turns 2 and 3 are so vital themselves.
Yeah, I mean, yes, yep, yeah. Now, well, this past weekend we saw just an absurd amount of black, green, and Jeskai variants. I have hope that this is not the full extent of the format. This is part of the thing we're seeing is that control decks are profiting from how much everybody is relying on fatal push, and how much the cheap interaction is like one of the only ways to fight black green. I do think black green and Copycat are two of the defining forces. I think that combo is crazy and should not have been made this way. And I think that the black-green deck, just on the merits, is overpowered. And it's weird, though, right? Like, I think that the overwhelming warping effect of this black-green, we are seeing part of the consequence of Reflector Mage being banned. Because now, keep in mind, it'd be easy for people to be like, oh, see, they shouldn't have banned Reflector Mage. But if if all these Felidar Guardian decks, these Saheeli decks, if they had Reflector Mage also, forget about it.
So I actually have a little bit of a different thought about this, which is if you just even contrast the energy version of Black Green, with Glint Sleeve Siphoner as its. This is like the defining thing about this card. At 4 Glint Sleeve Siphoners, I don't even have room for 4 Walking Ballistas, let alone 3 Verdurous Gearhulks, If you look at that versus the more Delirium version like Todd played, and we've been talking about cards like Traverse the Ulvenwald, etc., I think that there's an argument to be made that these are not just, 2 different decks for the purpose of calling them one aggro and one of them Delirium, but they're distinct strategies in the same way that Blue-Green Madness was a distinct strategy from Blue-Green Threshold. And
great point.
Then, they have many cards in common, but playing against those decks was different, right? Like one deck is more about Roar of the Worm, which means that bounce cards were better against it. One deck was more about if you didn't actually have a Madness Enabler, you couldn't cast your cards. But if you had a Madness Enabler, your cards were overpowered. Fighting one deck was much more about being able to target cards like Aquamoeba and Wild Mongrel, even if Wild Mongrel, let's say, was in the other deck, right? Versus the other deck being about bigger creatures, and some of its best cards like Werebearer, especially Nimble Mongoose, were highly resistant to removal. So I think that these are 2 different strategies. Like if you go up against the energy deck thinking that it's going to be about a 4/5 flyer that all of a sudden gets covered with +1/+1 counters, that's not going to be. You didn't save your removal for the right thing, then, and that's going to cost you. And if you're going to say I just know he's going to play this drop into this drop, you might lose to the card advantage or the slight advantages of cards like Gifted Aetherborn in the Black-Green aggro deck. That's what I think.
That's reasonable. As much as I'd love to be completely just focused on Jeskai and Black-Green, what did you think of William Bingham's Teamer Eldrazi deck? We're talking like Eldrazi aggro.
Which finish was he?
14th place. Yeah, 14th place at the Standard Open. So his 2-drop mixture. His 2 drops were just 4 Metallic Mimic, which I thought was interesting. Metallic Mimic naming Eldrazi. And then his 3 drops, 4 Eldrazi Sky Spawner, 4 Matter Reshaper, 3 Rogue Refiner. And then his 4 drops, 4 Thought-Knot Seer, and obviously starting to play stuff like Wretched Griff and Elder Deep Fiend. And then finally, 2 Reality Smashers and a Drowner of Hope to help round things out, which he can obviously access with Sanctum of Ugin.
I can't get behind this strategy, I don't think. I think, the fact that he only has Metallic Mimic for 2 drops, it puts him in, you're just so far behind what another creature deck would be able to do on turn 2, at the same time as not having amazing reactive ability. It'd be one thing if he just had some cheap cards that were Stone always beat the Saheeli Rai combo, but he doesn't, right? We just talked a bunch of ways how you can play around Shock. And I don't know, just starts off 2 behind, in my opinion. I mean, if you look at a card like Eldrazi Sky Spawner, it's an awesome card. It's awesome enough to be heavily played in Modern, but it's often heavily played in Modern because you have cards like Noble Hierarch to set it up, let alone double lands. That's not an advantage he has.
Part of the trouble I have with this is the 3 Rogue Refiners is the only green. He's got 2 Natural States and a World Breaker in the sideboard, but this deck, it's not like you're getting the green for cheap or easily. He's got 11 green sources, and that's counting the Crumbling Vestige. This is a mana base that uses 2 Evolving Wilds and only 4 basics, one of which is a Wastes. This is a mana base that has so many colorless lands despite trying to play 3 color. I don't know why you need to splash for Rogue Refiner. Like, I don't know. To me, it's like, I get it. It works with the Eldrazi, emerge cards, but like, so do a lot of things.
I actually had the same thoughts about the red. Where it's like, I guess you want to have...
Well, the red, he has Shock and Harness Lightning. I think you need some sort of, maybe you could just play some more cheap cards. But you got to be doing something early in the game or you're going to get run over.
But, like, Rogue, I think I know what he's doing with the Rogue Refiner, right? Like, this is a card you put down. It costs only 3, right? Only in quotes, because getting the first green, like you've intimated, is not free. But it's now setting him up for Wretched Griff and Elder Deep Fiend, right? Like, he's got, like, a really clear path to his emerged portion of his deck. An advantageous path. And I think the Rogue Refiner is probably too cute, right? Like, his big point here, other than being a setup man for Emerge, is like you get this energy that makes some future Harness Lightning that much better. Is that kind of it?
It's just a 3/2 draw card. I mean, it is an undercosted card.
Yeah, but sure, it's an undercosted card if you're using most of the text on it. That's my point.
You don't even need to use the energy, I don't think, for it to be undercosted. But you do need to pay 3 for it to be undercosted. If you're paying 4, and like the moment you have to Evolving Wilds and go get a forest, I wonder if things could have been different.
Yeah. So my point, I think that the Eldrazi, excuse me, I think the Eldrazi are going to prove to be relevant still in Standard, but I don't think this is the way, personally.
So, what do you think about these blue-black control decks? There were 3 in the top 32, the highest finisher being 24th place, Andrew Davis, using 4 Torrential Gearhulk, 2 Kalitas, Trader of Get, and then a mix of Planeswalkers, 3 Liliana, 2 Obnixilis, and 1 Jace. And then for spells, having 3 Fatal Push, 4 Grasp of Darkness, 4 Disallow, 3 Murder, 2 Ruinous Path, 2 Negate, 4 Glimmer of Genius.
I think I love it.
So lots and lots of one-for-one interaction with Planeswalkers, Torrential Gearhulk, and Glimmer of Genius to get ahead, and Kalitas to help round things out.
I think I love it. The high mana base, high land count, I should say, and kind of consistency into getting into Torrential Gearhulk is very attractive to me. I think I would like to see some Yeheni's expertise. Andrew has 2 in his sideboard, but I think just for the same reasons that you were saying before about being forced to catch up against black-green, I think I'd like to see some sort of real wider catch-up. I mean, maybe Yeheni's expertise is the wrong one.
The problem is it doesn't work. The problem is it doesn't work. Yeah, exactly.
If it doesn't work, the problem is then you have a deck that literally needs to line up its answer cards perfectly against threats that are undercosted and very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Literally, you have to answer every single awesome threat that the opponent plays if they're playing one of these creature decks. And since you're a deck with 27 lands and 6 drops, that's going to be a challenge.
Part of the problem, see, this deck looks very attractive on the surface, but part of my problem with it is that, you've only got 9 cards that cost 2 or less. There are going to be plenty of games where you just literally can't, first of all, imagine the half of the games where you're on the draw. Right? What if they just play a Winding Constrictor on turn 2, and you don't happen to have one of your 7 cards that can interact before your 3rd turn? With creatures. If you have 3 Fatal Push and 4 Grasp of Darkness, if they go turn 2 Winding Constrictor, turn 3 Rishka Pima Renegade, what are you even doing? You're dead, right? That's it.
I mean, you're certainly behind.
Are you going to drop a Liliana on turn 3? Even if you have a Murder or a Ruinous Path,
no,
which by the way
terrible there.
Of course. Even if you have a Murder or a Ruinous Path, you're setting yourself up so bad to be blown out by Blossoming Defenses.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. That seems horrible to me. Yes. I agree.
I think that if this deck had access to 5-cost Damnation, then I would be like, what was the dragon one? Crux of Fate.
Crux of Fate.
Yeah, if this deck had access to Crux of Fate, I'd be way more inclined. But as it stands, I'm skeptical.
Do you think a bounce card would be good enough? Like just like Crush of Tentacles or something like that. Like that actually catches you up on the board.
I don't know, man. I don't know enough to be able to rule it out, but it isn't the first thing I thought of. So let's take a look at this. I assume it's going to be an Esper control deck. After all, it is Shaheen Sarani, and he top 32. And Shaheen would never, ever, ever abandon control. I mean, look at these other people. I mean, the tournament was won by a control deck. Surely Shaheen would. Oh, Shaheen is playing Black Green Delirium. I guess we'll just move on.
Well,
Shaheen, why have you abandoned us?
Maybe we'll learn more this coming weekend in Dublin. Maybe we will learn in Dublin what the secret cards necessary were to make black-blue viable. Because it does look attractive. It's just, you're right. Going second, like, oh my God, Patrick, what if you went second and played Island as your first land? Like, you just, I can't even think of a situation where you can get out now if Island is your first land. You can't even grasp. Like, you're just dead.
Well, all right, man. I got to get back to testing for the PT. Dude, I think this weekend we are going to see some freaky stuff.
So,
because I honestly don't think that this is the end of the evolution. This is merely the beginning. I do think that these are some of the defining forces, but I don't think we've seen all of the defining forces yet.
So before we go, just a couple of last things. One, we're Top Level Podcast. If you like this, please subscribe to us on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, however you like to subscribe. Share, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. Patreon, we love everyone, but we really love our patrons. This week, shout out to Travis Somerville from Patreon. Thanks a lot, Travis. And then
thank you.
One other shout out, Patrick. I don't know if you know this, but Jack Stanton is doing an auction for the family of Quentin Hoover. So we lost Quentin Hoover, the artist of many of my favorite Magic cards a few years ago. But Jack is doing I don't know if it's fair to say a charity auction, but he's taking no commission for it.
A benefit for the family.
So if you go find Jack on Facebook. Or his art on Facebook.
He's good people. He's one of the historians of Magic and important figure in the history of documenting Magic culture and writing about the game and just the community as a whole. And this is, of course, Jack is always looking out for the people in the community, and obviously tragic situation. And anybody who can definitely check out the auction for the benefit of the family.
Yeah, so I think this week he's putting up what he says is the pre-sketch for Earthbind, which is, I mean, if you got $5,000 in your pocket, maybe go check it out. So shout out to Jack also. Thanks, everybody, and good luck to Patrick and Team Top Level.
Awesome. All right, see you on the other side, man.
Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play dredge for jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stays